Hello everybody, I am Ben from Team Panic, and Heat 4 of Bugglebots is out, and that is my heat. That is Annie, Are You Okay? And me going through a heat at Bugglebots. So today we're going to talk about that heat and everything that happened in it. So if you haven't watched that yet, stop this video right now and go and watch that heat. It's a great heat. There are some really good robots in it. So yeah, check that out. There will be a link in the description and also at the end of the video, but if you haven't seen it yet, stop now, go to the description, watch that, and come back here. So this is going to be kind of a fight recap and kind of just a touch-up of the things that I said on the show. Also, once again, go and watch that if you haven't already. I'm going to assume from now spoilers are okay. So, unlike my usual fight recaps, this is going to be a bit more kind of off the cuff. I normally have some structured stuff I want to say about each one of these things, but in this case we've only got two, and there's only a little bit of stuff that I actually need to kind of clarify and fix up around the edges of what I said there during interviews and bits and pieces. So yeah, they do a really good job of filming everything and getting that going. So let's start with Annie versus the Berg. And also I should say I've got two different versions of Annie in front of me. This is the new version that we've been working on all year, and this is the old version which has the components that are actually at Bugglebots, because of course Bugglebots was filmed way earlier in the year, so there's been a lot of changes and improvements to Annie since that time. Anywho, let's go back to Berg to Furious. So, first off, totally called it. Fake news from the word go. As soon as that interview started, they were all about their fake news. Love it. Those guys put on a really great show. They were also actually my table mates. So I was sitting here working on Annie, and they were sitting there working on the Berg. Those guys are a great laugh. The stuff they do on camera is hilarious, and I love them for it. It makes the whole thing interesting and entertaining, and I really hope that they keep it up and keep improving it in new and interesting ways. The restraining order they had against him was awesome. I really wish I had a photo of it. If I do, I might put it up on screen. If I don't, you're just gonna have to take my word for it. The whole thing was in Comic Sans. It was amazing. I loved it. It was a great little prop. I'm actually kind of sad they didn't show a close-up of it in the actual video, but yeah, that is the way it goes. I mean, I guess there probably really wasn't time for that. And also, the editing of Bugglebots is quite stellar, and that type of thing, like showing that restraining order in full, would have been a really big pause in the edit, and yeah, probably actually wouldn't have fit. Like I said, they do a really good job editing Bugglebots. The flow of those episodes is so good. I wish I could edit half as good as that. But anyway, that is beside the point. So the actual fight itself was a great fight. This was, like I said, back really early days for Annie. She'd only had a couple of fights in Adelaide previous to this one, and she worked the best that she'd worked up to that point. The weapon spun up, the single tooth did exactly what it was supposed to do. It did take a couple of little nicks from their drum, but for the most part it got under the drum and kind of took out their front section a little bit. They had some forks down there that got taken out. And then of course we went around, we got the wheels, and that slowed them down and stopped them. So that was beautiful and perfect. It was exactly the way I wanted Annie to work when I first came up with this idea and decided to build her. However, at the end of that, I did say in the pit interview that there was an issue, and there was. The issue was that the weapon system got hot during the whole fight. So I wasn't really sure at the time what that was, and it took me quite a long time to actually work it out. Even in the pits there, I didn't fix it. I didn't know what it was. I basically just kind of barreled on through into the next set of fights, hoping that everything was going to be okay. I did not ever work it out there, but I did work something else out, and that was the new 10mm thick HDPE panel and the new belt system that I had in here weren't the greatest. There was actually a problem with them where the old belt system allowed the belt to ride up, totally up into the chassis of Annie, and it actually melted out the bottom of this HDPE panel. So here's Annie's front armor from that fight. In actual fact, this is her armor from all fights at Bugglebots. It is 10 mil thick HDPE, which is pretty solid stuff. And if we have a look under here, there is a nice big hollowed out mark in it. This is where the pulley for, the belt for the weapon actually melted its way into the HDPE. It rose up into the HDPE and melted its way through. And it basically meant that anytime I swapped belts over or swapped weapon systems over or anything, if I moved the actual weapon by hand, the belt would rise up into here and jam, and I'd have to take the whole weapon apart and put it all back together again. But if I put the weapon together, didn't touch it, left it completely alone, and put it into the test box and span it up, the effort of spinning the weapon up would actually melt its way through this HDPE and leave a path for the belt to go. So that's where you can see this. This is actually about 4 different weapon spin-ups attempts between different fights that I had with different weapon systems and the testing and all that kind of stuff. So, but every single time, even though it had burnt the belt into there a couple of times, it still needed that belt to burn in there and leave its own track every single time I changed the weapon system over, which this was not good. That meant that the weapon was actually running slower and less reliably than it could have been. And you can actually also see that under here. This is the weapon stack up. This is what the weapon goes through. It's a piece of box section. And in under here, you get the same thing. You can see the burn marks, or where the rubber has rubbed itself up against the aluminium plate here. And in the actual chassis itself, there is a big hole under there. So this is the only point it could contact, was this and the HDPE that sat down somewhere like that, I think. Yeah. But yeah, so you can see, like I said, that it was rubbing away and wearing away, and yeah, that was not good for the belt. It wasn't good for the weapon system. And like I said, it did leave us with less power than we should have had. Also, this weapon stack up is exactly where the problems came from in terms of heat in the weapon stack up. So if these bearings were over compressed, they would heat up. If they were under compressed, then this could happen, where you can turn the shaft inside the hub. And basically what was happening is, with the 300-gram weapon disc on the thing, or single tooth weapon on the thing, and spinning it round, it was actually turning inside the aluminium as well. So the dead shaft was moving, and that is where some of my heat was coming from. And also I think, that the bearings were jammed up a little bit, because at the moment they're jammed up too tight for me to spin this properly. And yet, like I said, I can spin the weapon shaft here by hand sometimes, but with the weapon on, there was definitely enough torque to do that, and there was rubbing and wear around where this nut goes at the top here that indicates that that is what happened. And that's where some of that heat was coming from, was rubbing and wear between the steel bolt and the aluminium chassis piece here. So that's what happened with the Bug dealt with. One thing I'll just quickly address here is the puns. Oh my god, the puns. So many Michael Jackson references dropped by both Bob and Sarah during this. I need to have some kind of comeback to those next season, because, if there's a next season and if I get in, I need some kind of comeback to those, because I was just laughing like a maniac for each of those. So if you can think of some good stuff to come back with to the Michael Jackson puns, please leave those in the comments below, and I will take them very seriously. I might even take them to Bugglebots. Fingers crossed. Come on guys, bring on season 3. Anyway, we'll move on now to the Claws 2 fight. Now, this one was always going to be an interesting fight for me, because of course they are a really good wedgie grabber bot that they're kind of a difficult thing to take on with an undercutter, especially if you do just charge headlong at them, which at the time was my plan. It was just to spin the weapon up and charge at people and see what happens, which wasn't all that great. But the thing is, I hadn't brushed up on Bugglebots Season 1 before going to this competition, and that was my mistake, because I was expecting Claws 2 and Felicity to box rush me, and I said this in the post-fight interview. I was expecting that box rush. I just, in my brain somehow, I thought it had to happen. So as soon as the fight started, I jammed the throttle all the way up. I knew I wasn't going to have time, well, I thought I wasn't going to have time to spin the weapon up. And what that ended up doing was actually breaking stuff in Annie. So what ended up happening was, because the belt tension wasn't quite right, it was good, but it wasn't perfect. And I would say that for every iteration of Annie, it's been good, but not perfect. And that means if you put too much strain on the belt, the pulley at the back, so there's two pulleys, one at the back, one at the front. The back one has teeth on it and the front one does not, allowing the weapon to slip a little bit. So if the tension isn't quite right, the back one will actually chew teeth off the belt, or start to chew teeth off the belt. And that's what happened in this case. I spun the weapon up really quickly. The weapon didn't start moving, but the weapon motor was going a million miles an hour, and it was starting to chew the teeth off of the weapon belt. And that meant that the friction point at the front on the smooth pulley wasn't as good as it should have been. And even though I got the weapon up to speed then, and I got the weapon up to speed a couple more times, when you start hearing that squeaking in the fight, that is when the weapon belt has lost too much on the teeth, and it's now just kind of squeaking against the front pulley rather than spinning the weapon up to speed. The problem is, that I just spun the weapon up too quickly every single time. I was pushing it too hard, and it was basically, I pushed it too hard at the start, and that was my first mistake. And then to make up for my first mistake, I kept trying to push the weapon hard, which was another mistake on top of another mistake. However, I will say, watching that fight back, I had the weapon going for longer than I remember. I honestly thought I got about 2 spin-ups, and then the weapon died. So I thought I only had the weapon for the first third, but it's more like the first 2/3 that I had the weapon for. So there were some good hits in there that would have been more powerful and would have been better had I done the work and got the thing done properly, got the tension done properly, and also eked the weapon blade up slowly rather than jamming it all the way up. If I'd done that research and known that Claws 2 was not going to box rush me. So there was a lot of things in this fight that I could have done better. There was a lot of things in this fight I feel like I did pretty well. Even after my weapon went down, I stayed aggressive, I stayed on them. I did get a good number of pushes on them, but of course Annie's not really designed to be a pushy machine. So I was always going to be a little bit on the back foot in that case. When the weapon stops spinning, she's really not there to do much else other than deliver that weapon into somebody. So yeah, pushing power was never going to be my forte. I was quite happy that there was one almost pitting in that fight. That was good. I did enjoy that. That was closer to the pit than I remember it being in the actual day. And talking about the pit, we should of course talk about the pit escape. And I said it then, and I will say it again now, there was a whole lot of luck in getting that to actually work. I think it was just lucky in terms of the actual placement of Annie over the pit, because all of her weight was balanced on one wheel and the drive shaft for the weapon, because there were 2 standoffs at the front, but both of those were off the ground. One was off the ground because Annie was leaning over into the pit, and the other one was off the ground because it was over the pit. But that meant I had grip on one wheel and I had enough wiggle to wiggle myself back onto the table. If the weight had been distributed literally any other way, Annie would not have been able to survive that particular pitting maneuver. So there was a huge amount of luck in not going down that pit. So I guess now that we're kind of towards this point, I should talk about the judge's decision a little bit. I was surprised that it was unanimous. I was surprised on the day, and I'm still surprised that it was unanimous. However, I believe it was the right decision. I thought it was closer than a unanimous decision, but I believe they made the right call. And the reason I believe that is because I broke the 2 rules of spinners, or maybe I made the 2 sins of spinners, which are: don't break your weapon and don't let it go to a judge's decision. If you can keep your weapon going the whole time and then also knock your opponent out, you're guaranteed a win. That's how spinners win, right? So by having both of those things happen, by breaking my weapon and letting the fight go to a judge's decision, I was already on the back foot. So yeah, her control and driving did eke her out in the end. like I said, I think it's the right decision. I think it was a good decision. I was expecting it to be closer than unanimous, but whatever. This is the thing. Judging is a hard thing, and I don't envy those people who do it. They have very difficult decisions to make in some cases, and yeah, I think we should just be thankful to them for doing that. Obviously, there are going to be judges' decisions you agree with and some that you disagree with, but at the end of the day, you need to take that ruling as final, and you just need to be okay with that. I mean, I am absolutely okay with that, and I want you guys to be okay with that as well. I've seen some comments already from people saying that I was robbed and so on and so forth, and that's cool. You can think that, that's great, but please don't get nasty, please don't get mean, please don't go after the judges for any of their decisions. They have a hard job to do, they do it to the best of their ability, and look, at the end of the day, they're people. Sometimes they make mistakes, sometimes they don't. That is what it's all about. But yeah, like I said, we just need to be okay with any judge's decision, whichever way it goes, for the person you wanted it to go for or against the person you wanted it to go for. Just, you know, keep a bit of zen with all of these type of things. And yeah, please don't go after anybody. Please don't be nasty. Please don't have hate comments, that type of thing. The judges are all great people. The Bugglebots crew are awesome people. Yeah, it's a good production, and yeah, just keep things nice. That's all I want to say here. I mean, this one, like I said, I don't feel like this should be that contentious. Yeah, the only thing, like I said, is I thought it should have been a little bit closer, but I guess they just all saw it exactly the same way. Yeah, so that is basically the end of those fights. It is a little bit interesting. The clip at the end there that they showed after that fight with me talking in the pits, that was very correct. I hadn't actually been thinking about the fact that if I beat Claws 2, I would have been up against Nate and Thunderchild, and that would have been an incredibly difficult fight. Nate is the Wedge King, basically. He is a very wedgy boy, and I mean, he took out Daedalus. Let's be honest, like, if he can take out Daedalus, what's he gonna do to Annie? Like, it's just, yeah, that would have been a very, very tough fight. But I'm also going into a very, very tough fight now. The 10-way rumble for the Heat semi-finalists that is coming up at some point in the future that you absolutely need to watch has some insane robots in it. In this 10-way rumble, it is going to be an absolute madhouse, and I cannot wait for you guys to see it. We'll of course do a quick chat like this after that and after any other fights, if and or when they happen. But like I said, we know at this point that we have the 10-way rumble coming up. I can tell you without it being spoilery, because you can see the robots that are in there. It is going to be a nuts fight, and you do not want to miss that one. So do make sure you're subscribed over at Bugglebots so that you don't miss that one. Of course, I will also be posting stuff here, letting you know it's all happened, but yeah, you really don't want to miss that one. I think I want to round this out by thanking the whole team and everybody in my heat and just everybody involved in the production of Bugglebots. It is a great event to be at. Everybody in the pits, and especially all of the competitors in my own heat, were amazing, wonderful people. I really am keen for a season 3, mostly just to go back over there and see all those people again and talk to them and fight them again and just hang out with them in the pits, because it was a stellar experience. Even up to this point, and like I said, we haven't even got into that 10-way rumble yet. Yeah, it was great fun. So thank you to all of the Bugglebots team, thanks to the judges, thanks to my heat mates, thanks to all the other competitors. And yeah, that's all we're gonna say about this little one. When the 10-way rumble comes out, I will do another video here talking about my experience in the 10-way rumble. But first I need to watch the 10-way rumble, because I swear I only remember half of it or less at this point in time. So it's going to be as much of a surprise to you as it is to me at this point in time. Or maybe half of. Anyway, I hope you guys have enjoyed this kind of rambly video, and I will see you in the next one.